So I always get asked this question, like, what does a newsroom look like? So this is basically it. This is the news section here. So I will sit there, and then Marvin sits there because he wants to look directly into my face. But okay, that's like where most majority of the journalists sit. It's very empty right now, obviously, because weekends nobody comes into the office, unless you're working like me and you want the quietness. That's where you go out. So here you have your sub-editors that edits all the stories before it gets published. That's our boardroom. So that's mostly where I'll sit and have my meetings. If I'm in a press conference, or if I am dealing with political parties, or if we have to call the president's office, if he's, involved in a story and we need commentary, then we will go in here and speak to him. It's quite big. Yeah. Okay, so that's the sub-editors. Then you have your editors that will sit here that deal with your sports and your video contents and all that. And then that's the kitchen. And then basically that's like the whole floor right down to right at the back. So it's really nothing fancy, you guys. So Nicole, so as the morning reporter for News24, you've literally got like the weight of the whole site on your shoulders by covering all the national news that you get thrown at on a daily basis from 5 o'clock, sorry, till 1 o'clock. What is that like for you?
Well, it sounds like it's more pressure than it is. I think with most things in life, practice does make it a lot easier, but it is having to think in two different ways during your workday. So the first half of my workday is a national focus, and it's fast news, things that are happening, literally breaking news as it's happening. And we have two formats that we file in. So we'll often file short, sharp pieces into a live feed of any breaking news. So an example would be if there's a protest that's blocked off a major highway, that's something that we would put together into a short little piece and get that out as soon as possible. We then would develop it into a bigger full-length story that would go on the website as sort of a standalone copy. But with that, it means you're constantly approaching every story with two different angles. First, what is happening right now, short and fast, get that out as soon as possible, and then how you take it forward into a longer form piece that's going to be read later on in the morning. One of the big challenges is that you have to have contacts absolutely everywhere. So I will do national news, which means knowing people from the Western Cape all the way up into Limpopo, every department of almost every municipality, there's a chance you might need to phone them at some stage. So every single contact that you make is so important, because you never know when you're going to have to phone them at 6 o'clock in the morning and wake them up and ask them for comment. And then the second half of my shift, when the rest of the team joins me, takes quite a different turn, and there we really focus on subscriber content, content that adds value to the news that's happened that morning. So we move beyond just filing a standalone story that when people wake up they're going to read and get all the background. It's looking at really in-depth, giving insight that most news agencies wouldn't be able to give with just sort of a 300-word news article.
Nicole, so what is the highs of the job that you do on a daily basis?
I think the high is almost always seeing the difference you make in people's lives. A lot of us go into journalism because we want to make a difference, and very often you just don't get the feedback that shows that your story has done it. 9 out of 10 stories go out into the world, and you just hope somebody reads it and it resonates with them. And I think the first time I actually saw for myself the difference that my work makes was after about 3 years of working as a community journalist. And I had covered a story in a township with people who were in very poor conditions, and they didn't have a lot of infrastructure. Their homes were in a very poor state. During a Cape winter, there was just water literally running everywhere, through the ceilings, through the doors, through the windows. And they'd asked me to approach the ward councillor and start working on a piece about what their living conditions were like. And as a result of that story, the ward council actually made special funding available and gave them building materials, and the city came out and helped them to just waterproof their homes and get proper roofs on, and it was an immediate tangible result purely based on an article that I'd written, and it actually improved people's lives and scores of people. And that was really the moment when I saw the power of journalism, even just for 2 or 3 people, that you can actually make a huge difference in their lives. And so often we forget that the story is bigger than us. It's actually about making the world better for everyone.
Nicole, so you've obviously seen quite a lot of things during this 8-year journey in journalism. You've seen and you've probably heard quite a lot of things in the media. Could you maybe just talk to me about what some of the difficult parts are of your job?
Yeah, there are a few. I think deadlines are always a challenge. I mean, it's just the job. It comes part and parcel of the work, but it is constant pressure, and you have to realize that going into the industry, there's never a day that you won't experience some form of pressure. But probably the most difficult part for me is the personal aspect of stories. I cover quite a lot of crime content, and very often it's a police report or a statement for paramedics. It doesn't really have a face or a name to it, so it's a bit easier to dissociate from the actual horror that is the crimes. And it gets very difficult when you step beyond that and you start putting people's stories to those incidents or those statistics. So for instance, gender-based violence stories, especially when there is a victim speaking out about her experience, or there's organizations who are sharing the work that they do on the ground. A lot of that is absolutely heartbreaking. And it's very difficult to sit in interviews with people where they're so emotionally raw and sharing that experience with you, and be able to absorb that and remain sensitive and still focused on your work. That is definitely the most difficult part of the job.
Marvin Charles, so you're a Cape Metro reporter for News24. Could you maybe just talk to me about, how long you've been in the industry and what prompted you to become a journalist?
So I've been in the industry for about 5 years. I never actually wanted to be a journalist, to be honest with you. I always wanted to be a diplomat, believe it or not. But I doubt very strongly that I'll be known for my diplomacy skills. So I decided, I love writing and I love reading and I love people. And journalism just appealed to me in that sense, because every single day you get to meet different kind of people and you get to write stories about them, and it's fascinating.
Marvin, so what is one of the highlights of your journalism career so far?
I remember I did a story when I was an intern at the Argus about this foreign national child who got an opportunity to play overseas in Thailand. And there was problems with him getting a visa because he was undocumented in the country. And through our reporting, the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs actually gave him a brand new passport. But that passport, he couldn't get proper documentation with that passport. And then it prompted, through our reporting at the Cape Argus at the time, for Home Affairs, the Portfolio Committee at Parliament to actually intervene, and they ordered them to rectify the matter. So that, to me, was the high of my career, because it showed that through small stories, there could be a substantial difference. And even though that this little boy didn't get the opportunity to play overseas, his story was told.
And then Marvin, what are some of the lows in your journalism careers? Have you had any backlash in terms of some of the stories that you've published on any of your platforms that you've worked for?
So yes, many times I was taken to the Ombuds office by the Patriotic Alliance, Gates McKenzie. He had a problem with some headline, and he accused us of being mouthpieces for the DA, and he basically banned us from ever talking to the PA or covering the PA ever again. That to me was what it is still, because it was quite recent, and that to me was the low point in my career, because our jobs are to hold those in power to account. And if you're a leader of such a vast majority of people, and you in a very powerful position, you shouldn't expect to be just lashed on your hand. You actually should be able to take the tough questions that the public is asking. And for people like Gayton McKenzie and the Patriotic Alliance, saying that they're not going to allow News24 to cover them anymore, it sets a dangerous precedent for political parties and for their supporters to make up their own minds about them as well.
Marvin, so as you know, the digital space is escalating on a daily basis, and with social media rapidly increasing on a daily basis, you have quite a lot of citizen journalists that have now claimed to be journalists by posting fake news, as we've seen over the years. Could you maybe talk to me about, what are the dangers of social media in terms of journalism and the media?
So I think here in South Africa we have a very big problem when it comes to citizen journalism, because what we have to do as professionals in this field, we go through a verification process to actually verify whether the story is true, because we owe it to our readers to give them factual information, because we fought very hard for that, especially during the apartheid era. We journalists were mouthpieces for the apartheid government. And we owe it to our readers to give them a fair, accurate view of the news. And when you have social media and citizen journalism, putting something out there, like, for example, a foreign national being attacked, there's no verification, there's no police confirmation, there's no interrogation of that specific video that just goes viral across social media. So I think that there's a massive danger. I think we have a very big problem also when it comes to people who think that they can do this job because they have a cell phone. And I understand that there are a lot of people out there that get very frustrated with us in terms of that we're not giving them the story quickly, we're not producing very quickly. But the reality is that we have a problem in our media space where we have shrinking newsrooms and no hands and small resources, lack of resources, interns, trying their utmost best to keep the publications afloat, and it's very dangerous.
So, Marvin Charles, there are quite a lot of young and upcoming journalists in our industry. What are what are the advice that you would give to those that want to make it into the industry and seem to think that there is a lot of fame behind journalism?
I think what young journalists need to do firstly is read. Read and practice your writing a lot, and also figure out what type of journalist you want to be. Whether you have a niche for political writing, whether you have a niche for entertainment, or whether you have a niche for crime and courts. But I think because we've glamorized this profession so much, it's very tough. It's a very tough job to do. Like I said earlier, we have smaller newsrooms, so you're not going to get your name out there immediately. You actually have to work very, very, very hard, because your name is your most valued commodity in journalism. Once people associate you with a story that you've been covering for a very long time, they associate that with trust as well. So this is not a quick, famous profession. This is a hard-working job that you have to allow your trust to be built. You have to allow people in your space. You have to allow, you need to be very flexible when covering stories as well. And if you have the mindset of that, you just want to cover specific stories, you just want to cover the royals, you just want to cover entertainment or lifestyle or human interest, you're not going to get very far, because you have to be very, you have to have a jack of all trades, basically. You know, you have to be able to cover court, you have to be able to cover crime, you have to be able to cover the city of Cape Town. You know, issues that affect people are the main things that keep journalists driving every day.
I'm busy trying my best, but you fuckers keep talking.
Nicole Weisler.
Don't say that, please.
Yes,
please. Also, can you just say that when Abby comes back in? Like, just specifically.
Listen, if the gym has to stand over, it has to stand
It
over.
does have to stand over because there isn't a story.